Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we are changing the mental health narrative, bringing hope and solutions. Here's your host, Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist.
Sean Perry has 2 decades of coaching experience and working with youth. He ran 2 residential treatment centers for mental health and observed firsthand that mental health care was supporting the haves rather than the have-nots, much more than anyone would like to admit. The lack of equality in mental health support services pushed Sean to create We R H.O.P.E. Incorporated. We R H.O.P.E. hopes to create change in mental health by bringing mental health support at a much younger age and breaking the stigma of mental illness at the school and community level. Well, Sean, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to see you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Can you let us know a little bit about what's happening with your group, your projects, your schools that you work for?
Yeah, absolutely. So since the last time we spoke, we had I think we had 11 schools at that time, and in the middle of the school year, we've recently opened up in 5 different schools, which is just extremely exciting. We've hired a bunch of new people, and it's always good to create new jobs. So not only are we in Vermont and New Hampshire, but we recently opened up in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. So we've got Pine Bluff High School, and we're working on getting the middle schools and elementary schools within the district as well, and looking to continue to grow down here. We're gearing up right now for our what's called the Upper Valley Youth Wellness Retreat. It's a 3-week, 4-day-a-week summer retreat for kids. We have the very first youth mental health gala in the state of Vermont, which is happening May 21st. So we're super excited about that. We've got a youth mental health motorcycle ride coming up. And we have recently partnered with Mindful African Initiative in Nairobi, Kenya. And I'll be flying out to see our partners there and start work in Kenya.
Wow. That's exciting.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
So what's the gala going to be like in Vermont?
So the gala is an opportunity for people to come together, get dressed up, right? People haven't done it in a long time. Get dressed up. We've got a lot of really great sponsors. Collaborate and talk about the challenges that we as mental health professionals and parents and educators that we see, and also hear about the amazing work that We R H.O.P.E. is doing. And it's an opportunity for us to raise a little bit of resources. But mostly, it's not so much about raising the capital as it is about people getting an opportunity to know that we really exist, if that makes sense. So we're still, we're a small organization. Although we've done the CNN spot and we're champions for change, people still in the state, have no idea that we're even here. So it's an opportunity for people, we've really been promoting it, and I was just telling Adam, who's our director of development, the other day. I said, man, this is crazy. We've sold almost 100 tickets, which was the goal. And we've got some online as well. There are people that are going to be joining us via Zoom. And I said, half of these names up here, I don't even know who they are. And I said, that's amazing, right? That people are coming out and they want to know who We R H.O.P.E. is. And so that's the really exciting piece. So we've got several speakers, a couple affiliated specifically with We R H.O.P.E., our director, and affiliate clinical director. And then we've got former Chief Justice John Broderick of New Hampshire, who's going to be speaking and telling his personal story a little bit about it. And then I'm going to be going through all of the great work that We R H.O.P.E. has been doing over the last several years in our growth.
Prior to starting the interview, we were talking about some of the results you're getting. Can you review that for us? You're talking about measuring anxiety and decreases in anxiety. And since you're getting near the end of the school year, you've got some results.
Absolutely. So we've partnered with an organization called, or a company called MD Logics or Behavioral Health Works, or BH Works. And the way that we track our data. We're in the middle actually right now of an IRB in our manuscript being written by by someone affiliated with Dartmouth. And so we've been collecting data to prove our evidence, right? To prove that what we do works. And so we came up with this idea of, what is a common measuring tool that the clinical world knows and respects, right? And that's a generalized anxiety disorder survey. It shoots out a number, lets you know where a student is and their anxiety. And so we took that and we said, we can use that as a data tracking tool, right? Why not? So we started, what we do is we do an intake, and then we do it every 30 days. And so every 30 days spits out a number, and we can actually in real time start to see the decrease in anxiety by working with their coach 5 days a week. And we do the behavioral health screen at the beginning of services and at the end of service, so intake and exit. And the reason that we do that at the intake and the exit is because there are going to be that screener screens for suicidality, depression, physical or sexual abuse, and we know that there are going to be some things that we can never change because of those things. Some of those things are happening at home. But because we screen for so many other things within there, what we realized was that if we did it at the beginning and we did it at the end, we could see what work we have done and if there were any significant changes in that behavioral health screen. So we do that as well. Now, we just pulled some data for our gala to show to everybody. And out of 260 students that we've pulled the data from thus far, what we saw was a 73% decrease in anxiety from the intake to the exit. 73% decrease in anxiety. And that is just huge.
Right. That's amazing.
And what was interesting about this, Tim, is when we sent the data to our people that are writing up the manuscript, they looked at it and they said, well, this is inconclusive, because they didn't realize that we're seeing kids 5 days a week. So what they were looking at was, well, roughly after 90 days, you're saying that there's a decrease, but we've got no real evidence to say that there's a decrease because it's such a short period of time. And so I had to go back and explain to them, we see those kiddos roughly 75 times in 90 days. So it's not inconclusive. This is solid, data that's showing it, because what they're looking at is like the standard, therapeutic setting of, you're going to see a kiddo once a week. And it's like, no, we've seen that child more in 90 days than they would ever see a therapist in an entire 12-month time frame. And so they've got to change the way in which they're viewing our data. So it's just some amazing results in the work that we do. And we already knew that, but to be able to have it concrete and people to see it it's just awesome.
Wonderful. Well, I was talking to several people recently about Nadine Burke Harris's book, The Deepest Well. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard of it. I've not read it yet.
It's just that, she's a medical doctor who's gone into some impoverished areas around San Francisco and really just trying to help the community. And what she found was that the ACEs study, the Adverse Childhood Events study that came out in the late 90s, it's platinum. When you start using that to assess people and screen, and she screens now in her practice and with her clinic, everybody that comes in. And she's found a way to do it in such a way that people don't have to report what their adverse events in childhood were or what the adverse events in their children's lives are, but then they get a score. Mm-hmm. And the correlation between a score of 2 or more adverse childhood events and future mental, emotional, but primarily physical problems is undeniable. And so when you use that information to inform your treatment, you realize these are children, these are young adults and adults who have dysregulated central nervous systems, which accounts for a lot of that rise in anxiety and difficulty handling everyday stressors because they're already up at this fevered pitch. And then you can start using, you mentioned mindfulness and some other approaches, this 5 days a week contact with a coach are the kinds of stability that help somebody internalize the resources for dealing with life better.
Absolutely. Consistency and support is what works. It's always going to work. If for instance, perfect example, if I wanted to become a bodybuilder, right? And I said, hey, I'm going to dedicate 1 day a week to becoming a bodybuilder. How long do you think that's going to take me? But if I say, I'm going to become a bodybuilder and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to live it, I'm going to breathe it, it's going to be a part of my everyday. At some point, I'm going to give to that. Then you're going to see rapid success. And what we're saying to these students is, if you give to yourself the supports that are needed, then you're going to see rapid success.
Exactly. You're
going to be able to gain these skills more efficiently. And I've seen her TED Talk about ACEs and the amazing work that she's doing there. And that is one of the reasons that we started. It's interesting, after watching her, one of the reasons that I started to, we were actually going to start using ACEs in our work. Then there were some questions up there we were a little concerned about. So we decided to go with a behavioral health screener because we can get some more data from that screener as a whole. But what's interesting about what you just said is, because of that screener, you have to remember, kids come to us because of their behaviors, right? Is the reason that the schools are sending them to us.
Right.
What we're able to do because of that screener is say, well, this child was sexually assaulted. This child's been physically abused. This child basically is struggling with significant trauma, generational poverty, you name it. And you're wondering why they're not showing up, right, for you in class. Here's the reason. So now you can you do shut down the naysayers, right? The old school guard of teachers that are so focused on the students just not doing what they're supposed to be doing in class, and say, here's the reason. Would you be able to focus on class and school if you were dealing with these obstacles? And it starts to bring everybody onto the same playing field and say, we have a significant problem with this child and we need to offer these supports so they could be emotionally available and safe.
Well, and the other thing is that there's so much more research going on now about how, when we are subjected to adverse events and traumas in childhood, it actually influences how our brain and body and nervous system and hormonal system develops. And so, it's a challenge to function well or at a high level if your central nervous system and your endocrine system and everything about your response to the world around you is off kilter.
Well, the body keeps the score, right? There's Dr. I can never remember his name correctly, but
he is one of the premier researchers and writers about trauma.
Yes.
Bessel van der Kolk.
That's Sir Van der Kolk. Yes. And I've read his book, and I actually had it playing in the car. I would listen to it. I had books on tape and playing it in a car. And one day my son was in the back seat, and I figured, well, he could hear some of this stuff. And then he got into a story, and I said, well, we got to shut that off right now. It was a little too much, but.
Well, and Gabor Mate, who's written extensively about the research that says when we have these kinds of traumas in our childhood, it dramatically impacts brain development, which then sets us up for that immediate gratification, that addiction pattern, that, running from our own internal pain because we don't have the strength in the core and the resources to deal with it. And his book, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, is another one that really talks about how many people are basically cast aside and thought of as, well, they just have low self-esteem, or they've got weak, willpower, or they don't have self-control, when it's really about neurological development. It's really about the effects of trauma on our physiology if it happens at a critical time.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I can think of without getting too personal, I can think of a specific instance in my life that I witnessed someone else go through a very traumatic event that wasn't as traumatic for me, because we all deal with trauma differently. I saw the same event, but because of their place physically and location physically during the time of that event, it has changed the trajectory of their life. Well, the trajectory of their life.
Yeah. And, the people who really study trauma and how it, what it is and different definitions for it, understand that 5 people watching the same event may not all take trauma from it.
Yeah.
They may not download things that impact them later in life, but 2 or 3 of those people might never be the same. They might never feel safe. They might have rewritten some of their beliefs about themselves, their role in the world, whether or not the world is safe. And that's one of the ways to define whether or not an event that I've experienced has become a trauma for me. If I've changed some of my fundamental beliefs about myself and my role in the world and the world's safety, et cetera, we can say whatever that situation was traumatic for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And the kind of thing that you're doing by putting a coach in a school with a kid 5 days a week is, a great way to give them that consistency and stability and touch point so they can start to internalize the resources that can help them deal with life better.
Well, I think, that's the thing, is that a lot of these students that we're working with have never had that level of connection, right? Not that their families are not good, but we're talking about someone who is specifically geared towards supporting their social and emotional well-being. And I can 100% say that the majority of kids, the vast majority of children in the United States don't have that. That's a fact. That is an absolute fact. I don't care. You could be the best parent on a planet, but most of us, even as good parents, are not solely focused on those specific things. And to have that in such a crucial time in our society to kids are overstimulated. Poverty is, running rampant in some areas, all these things. To have someone focused in on those specific things is just beyond helpful. When we created this modality, we knew that we were onto something, because I think James and myself, we took from our own experience of what we believed we needed and looked at what the kids needed and said, what would be best, right? Not that we're the end all say all of what's best, right? But what were our needs as children, right? And to have someone there that was digging a little bit deeper than just a buddy, right? Was just, I think we're seeing great results, and the kids are loving their coaches. I filled in for a coach. She was getting married, and so she was gone for 3 weeks. And I filled in for a coach. James filled in for her. I filled in for her, and I came in and filled in one day. And one of the kids says to me, "Where's Coach?" And he's, "Where's Coach Lindsay?" And I said, "She's getting married, buddy. Like you already know that. When's she coming back?" And I said, "Well, she'll be back next Monday." I'm so mad at her, right? I'm like, "Why?" "She left me." And I was like, "She didn't leave you, right?" So, we're working with, but so then I see him the next day, and it's the same. Where's Coach Lindsay? And so our coaches are building such a bond with these kiddos that I don't think, from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing in schools, that a lot of kids aren't building with anybody else in the building, which is amazing.
Well, I think it's absolutely true, because there's so much of the school officials and teachers aides that they're so overworked and there's so much stress, and the system is broken. And having someone like you and We R H.O.P.E come in and trying to help shore up some of the worst parts of that broken system is just a true blessing.
Right.
So you mentioned something about the assessments you do. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the tools that your coaches use with the students that they find most useful?
Absolutely. So I think, one of the biggest tools that we use is, well, there's two: taking space, right? Taking space and breathing, right? Because these kids are coming in so overstimulated from whatever's going on at home, from their cell phones, from their peer groups, whatever it may be. And so what I tell one of the main things that I have all of the kids that I've ever worked with, and I tell our coaches the same thing, is create time in their day as part of their plan. They should be allowed within their classroom to take space. And the reason that we use the words taking space is because taking a break always has this negative connotation around it, right? Taking space means I'm going to take time for me and me alone. It's a time for me to reset. Now, taking space isn't a half an hour, 45 minutes. It's 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Step out of class, go grab some water down the hall, right? Use the restroom, take a break, take a breath, and remember to be present in the moment around what you're feeling and experiences. Check in with yourself. So we do a lot of like personal check-ins. What am I feeling? How do I know that I'm feeling that? Right? And what is it making me want to do right now? Right? So getting kids to be able to identify their emotional state is probably one of the biggest tools that we use, and it's just self-identification. But grounding skills, coping skills, and then as you know, right, grounding and coping are different for each and every person, right? So, a lot of five senses. What am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I smelling? All of that. How many colors are in the room right now, right? We try to give kids things that they can do that no one knows that they're doing in class, right? Because they get anxious about it. Well, if I do this, then somebody's going to know. So what can we find for you to do in class? Well, you can count colors in class and nobody will have a single idea that you're doing that, right? You can just ask to go take some space. You can ask to use the restroom and you're taking space for yourself and nobody knows that you're doing that, right? So there's several different things. You can sit in your chair and you can start at your toes and go to your ankles and go to your calves and go to, right? And feel your body all the way up while you're at your desk and nobody knows. So trying to get them to do things where they can learn how this can incorporate later on in life when they're at work, right? When they're with their partner and things aren't going well, right? All these things, all these skills that they can utilize within their lives at any given moment.
And you mentioned breathing. Is there a particular type of breath work that is?
They have them do the box. The box breathing really seems to be working well. It's one of the things that I think all of our coaches talk a lot about box breathing, right? 4 in, 4 out.
Hold for 4.
Out for 4. I think that's been one of the things that I've heard a lot about. When we hear back from students, I hear box breathing, box breathing, box breathing, box breathing. Or they have a new one now that they're utilizing, which is birthday cake breathing, right? So birthday cake is breathe in, right? Try to smell. Can you smell the birthday cake, right? Can you smell that? And then blow out the candles is another one, right? So really trying to center and focus on what does birthday cake smell like, right? So you're taking that, you're trying to remove whatever angst or whatever's going on in a moment and settling in on something specific for yourself.
Yeah, that's a great one, because what so much is not taught, but with things we can demonstrate to people, is whatever we're focusing on with our conscious mind is what we think is causing our upset.
Absolutely.
And so if we can shift on something else and we can demonstrate to ourselves, oh, it was my focus on that was causing the upset, not the thing itself, right? It's right. What I'm trying to make it mean, or how I think I should push it away, or how I should grab onto it. That's the mechanism that creates the tension within me, because that thing is still here. But if I can shift my thoughts over to, okay, what does a birthday cake smell like? And take that breath in and imagine blowing every candle out nice and slow. And all of a sudden, the anxiety or the upset comes down, and that thing that I thought was causing my upset is still right there across the room.
Absolutely. It's really about, it's interesting. We've heard these sayings, in our lives, right? Mind over matter, right? All these things like that. And it really does boil down to that, right? It's mind over matter. If I shift my focus onto something else, I can make a significant change in what I'm struggling with in that moment. It's literally that easy, but it's not that easy.
Yeah. And it gets easier the more, like any skill, the more we learn it and then practice it, the easier it gets.
Absolutely.
Especially if we can start to have these people do it, whether they're, school age people or adults, we can get them to do it enough that they start to develop that muscle memory for it. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they shift over to the birthday cake breath or the box breathing, or a shift of focus on what are they feeling from their ankles up to their chin, right? That kind of thing. The body remembers, oh, Tim wants to relax now, and starts to do that de-escalation all by itself.
Yeah, it's all about rewiring the brain, right? Creating new neural pathways. I try to explain to the kiddos and to the parents and to the teachers that this child has learned a faulty pattern of thinking, right? That has created faulty or / negative behavioral outcomes. And so we have to spend time rewiring the brain, letting them know that they don't need to respond in that way, right? So for instance, if you saw a spider when you were younger and your mother or father screamed and made a big deal about it, chances of you screaming and making a big deal about it as you have grown are going to be really high, right? So you've learned a faulty pattern of thinking. But if you learn to be present in the moment with that spider, realize that spider's not jumping at you, it's not going to attack you, it's not going to do anything. You can learn to walk by the spider, scoop it up, put it outside, whatever you want to kill it, whatever it is that you want to do to it, right? Without that panic setting in, without that anxiety coming up. And that's all about rewiring the brain. And I use a spider scenario because I live with my wife who is scared of bugs. And so she'll say, "Can you come get the spider?" And I'll say, "No, I cannot. You can do it. I will not come get a spider for you." But what's funny is that all 3 of my younger children have the same bug and spider fear because they saw mom with it, right? And those big reactions to it cause theirs. And so now they're, Dad, can you get the spider? Nope, can't get the spider. You got to do it. It's going to be okay. Right? I know you're scared. You got to do it. I'm not doing it. So, but we're trying to rewire their brain. Because I told my daughter, she's off in college, and I think she actually did call me one day while at school and said, "Dad, there's a huge spider in my room. What do I do?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. You got to kill it. That's, you're in New York. That is, Dad's in Vermont. I can't help you. There's nothing I could do. And this is part of life. This is what I've been telling you about for a long time. You got to learn how to take care of these things yourself." So it's rewiring and retraining that brain, as to look at things differently.
Well, before I forget, let's have you tell us a little bit more about what is happening for you in this partnership with Africa.
Yeah. So I think around the time you and I had originally spoke, I had either just finished or was just getting ready to teach emotional CPR in 16 countries in Africa and Southeast Asia. I was delivering that training there. And one of the people that helped to get that training together, his name is Timothy Anyango. Him and I just, after the training, we just connected, right? Just a great man who has really big plans for his country and the children in his country and all that he's seeing there and wanting to help and support. And so he's been doing all this other work of training other people, and so we had been talking probably since September and just staying in touch. And I was mentoring him on some other things just within his life and just kind of helping to support him. He was looking for ways to just stay on task of what he wanted to do and staying future focused. And so I was helping him and we started talking about, he wanted to do more than what he was doing. So we started talking about what it would look like for We R H.O.P.E to be in Kenya. And I'm just a doer, right? I don't want to have a conversation with you about something that we know that we can get done for the next year. Like, if we're going to do it, let's do it, right? You put a pin in it, you set a date, you make it happen. That's it. It's to me, that's that simple, right? There's no reason to have long drawn out conversations. So I said to him, what are your thoughts about doing the boots on the ground work there in Kenya? He said, "Oh my gosh, Sean, this is what I want to do that. How can we make that happen?" I said, "Well, the first thing we'd do is to get you trained in what we do and get all those trainings done. And then I get you on the We R H.O.P.E board and I've got to get approval from our board. You got to get approval from your board, and that's literally what we did. I said, I went to the board. I said, this is what I want to do. My board said yes. I said, okay, great. We made the announcement like the next day, right? That's how quick I move. And him and I had planned for me to go to Africa anyway, to ride motorcycles out there with him and just have fun. And so I said, he said to me, well, why don't we make it kind of like the opening when you come of We R H.O.P.E? And I said, all right, well, let's start planning for that then. What is that going to look like? So we got him trained and we got everything moving. And so the idea is we're going to pilot one school. We are currently working on, so Africa's a little bit different in the sense of the funding piece, right? So here in the States, we've got all these different ways for funding. There, it's a little bit different, right? So if you're in a private school, you actually have money. If you're in a public school, you don't have money. A little bit different in that regard. So what we're essentially doing is I've got our director of development currently working on grants for there. Anyango is working on grants as well. And he's also working on getting us. He's got 3 schools that have said yes. We just have to find the funding for them, and we're going to pilot one school. And when I get there in June, hopefully be able to open up and get going. And if we haven't opened up in June, then I'll at least have been at the schools and talking to them around, what the program looks like, how we're going to support it, so forth and so on.
Excellent. It's exciting.
Very exciting. Very exciting. We said we wanted to be in all 50 states, and I never imagined that we would be in Africa on another continent, just absolutely amazing.
Well, and if somebody who's hearing this says, well, we need the We R Hope program in our state or in our school district, what should they do?
They can go to info@wearhope.org. That's info at WERHOPE.org, and send me an email. That's really all they have to do, and say, hey, we want to get started. And I said, let's get, as long as they have the okay from the school, we can start talking about the contract piece. If not, and they have, ways to set up a meeting, I'm willing, we can start setting up the meetings. Let's say this, Tim, I don't say no to anybody when it comes to, can we get you in our building? Yes, you can. Let's figure it out. What I will say is one thing we're not going to do this year that we did last year is we're not going to open up in the middle of school year again. That was beyond stressful. And not that we can't do it, but what happens is it takes away from the schools that we're already in.
Right.
You know what I mean? So now where I had meetings set up and I'm supposed to do this, now I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off in all these different states trying to do something where I may have already, well, not may have, I already had my rotation planned out. I planned my rotation at the beginning of the school year of how many days I'm going to this school, how many days I'm going to that school. And when a new school district comes in, let's say December, January, February, that throws everything off kilter and we're already in a groove in the school year. So that would be the only thing that I would say to anybody is summer's getting ready to come up. If you want to start talking, We R Hope in your buildings in other states, let's start having that conversation now. The sooner the better, because once September hits, we're not taking any more contracts for the school year. What we have is what we have. And that's just so that we can make sure that we are delivering the best of ourselves at all times. And that I have dedicated my attention appropriately to each and every school that they deserve.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, it's delightful to see you again and to hear what you're doing. We will be hopeful that the next time we touch base, we're closer to that being in all 50 states.
Yes.
And we'll look at checking in a year to see about what the progress is in Kenya for We R Hope.
Yes, I'm excited. I cannot wait. I think, well, I know, right? Everything I've put my mind to, as long as I am staying in it, it happens, right? And I think that's for all of us. As long as we stay focused and we want it, we'll get it. It's when we doubt ourselves and we give up on ourselves and we say, and we listen to that man in the back of our mind that says, well, I don't know, when that guy pops in, I say, no, not today, man, not today.
Yeah. But you don't know how to do that. Yeah, well, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So, well, really, really nice to see you again as well. And I appreciate you having me back on.
Well, it's my pleasure. And as I said, we'll check in about a year and see how things are going in Kenya.
All right. That sounds great.
All right. Blessings.
All right. Thank you.
Sean Perry has 2 decades of coaching experience and working with youth. He ran 2 residential treatment centers for mental health and observed firsthand that mental health care was supporting the haves rather than the have-nots, much more than anyone would like to admit. The lack of equality in mental health support services pushed Sean to create We R H.O.P.E, Incorporated. We R H.O.P.E hopes to create change in mental health by bringing mental health support at a much younger age and breaking the stigma of mental illness at the school and community level. Sean is the president and co-founder of We R H.O.P.E. Sean is a certified life coach, cognitive behavioral coach, nonviolent crisis intervention specialist instructor, certified in childhood trauma, exposure response prevention specialist, signs of suicide prevention trainer, and he's trained in a collaborative problem solving and an international trainer for emotional CPR, one of the curriculum writers and trainers for youth emotional CPR, and the first to bring youth emotional CPR to a school setting.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, we invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.